Flux, fluxity flux. What the flux? Who the flux let you in here? Flux is everywhere, and everybody's telling you how to run it. You can run it locally on your PC. You can run it here and there. Why, you can run it most anywhere. What, you haven't figured out where you want to run it yet, and you don't have a high-end PC, and you have no intention of getting one? Because who wants to spend $3,000 on a graphics card? Oh, I do. Not. And neither do you. Look, if you're just getting started with AI technology, but you want to play with some of the toys that require high computing power, what do? Do you really invest in upgrading your computer just to see if you like something? But even if you know you like it, do you have that kind of money sitting around right now to upgrade your graphics card? And how do you explain that to the family? No, forget it, right? Who can feel me? So today I'm going to give you a couple of ways to play with Flux that gives you access to high-end GPUs, and it only costs cents an hour to run. So no big investments up front. I've done the math on this on another video. It's mind-boggling how much you save. We're talking about Mimic PC, which I've talked about before. It allows you to run these high-end AI applications just like you're sitting at a high-end computer from whatever computer has a web browser that you can access. So in this case, we're going to just play with a couple of these tools that run Flux. So all we got to do is get into our account. What do you mean you don't have an account? Well, maybe you should consider having one. I won't get too into all the ways that Mimic PC works. I'm just going to show you how you can get started with Flux. But I will say that if this type of remote access solution works for you, they are currently having a sale over at AppSumo for a one-time license at $49. So that's what I'll say about that. So when you get into Mimic PC, you have access to all of these popular AI tools like Automatic 1111, which helps you with creating images and videos in Stable Diffusion, RBC for voice cloning, Face Fusion, one of my favorites for face swapping, Koya SS allows you to train your own models and LoRa's, if you know what that is, and Invoke AI is another image generator. Whether it's Flux or something else you'd like to learn how to do here on this platform or using these AI tools, a quick start is just to go to the tutorial hub and scroll through the topics, because often these tutorials will not only tell you how to do what it is that you want to do, but allow you to have one-click access to the tool you need to make it happen. In this case, we're talking about Flux because it's an incredible model that everybody's talking about and comparing others to. Its ability to follow prompts, very complicated ones, and do text is really just about unparalleled, although it does have some competition out there. But it's definitely the model that has the most attention right now, and people are learning how to expand on it and train their own models. Today I'm just going to show you how to get started with it and start playing with it yourself, and you can choose the tool which looks the best for you. First of all, we're going to use a tool called Forge, which is based on Automatic 1111, which is a graphical front end to Stable Diffusion technology. It's what I used forever until I finally leaped over to Comfy UI, which I'm very glad I did, and one day you will too, mark my words. I can't really say that's true, because there really are some great and easy tools to use out there like Focus and Forge that make access to all this stuff very accessible, and you're not really losing too much in terms of what you can do with it. It might just be a little slower to appear on those platforms than it does with Comfy UI, but I digress. To start, I'm just going to add a new app, and I'm going to start with Forge. So I'm going to scroll down to where it says Auto 1111 Web UI Forge, and I'm going to click on Get Started. Now this is where you choose the GPU. As I said, you're paying cents per hour to access these high-end GPUs. Now the medium GPU here, the T4 with 16 gigs of VRAM, would have been fine for some stuff a little while back, but with Flux, we really want to give it as much memory to work with as possible, and trust me, I've tested it both ways. Although you can run Flux-related workflows on this medium system, the time you save, I think, will be worth more to you than the pennies that you save by going medium rather than something like large, or even large pro, which is what they highly recommend. It's still only $1.19 an hour. And you'll see that once you get this thing started, the speed with which you can generate, you can get a lot done in an hour for $1.19. I'm just going to click Create and Start and give it a few minutes to boot up this virtual machine and get Forge running. If you're wondering, as it says here, it takes about 30 seconds to 2 minutes to set up. That sounds means we're ready to rock and roll. Okay, don't get scared. If this is the first time you're looking at any of this, you're going to see all these forms, all these sliders, and you might just go, I'm out of here. Don't go quite yet. I'm here just to show you how to get started with Flux and create some great images, and while you could play with it all day with all of these other things, you don't really need to understand all of this just to start having fun. But here's what you will do, because we're here to play with Flux. Right up here, you have the different kind of models that you have access to. This would be the Stable Diffusion 1.5 model, this would be the Stable Diffusion XL models, and here we have Flux. Or you can have them all. Let's just limit it down to Flux, and you'll notice when I click from SD to Flux, for example, the whole interface changes. And all the settings that you would learn about if you followed the tutorial, which is what I was going to do, follow the tutorial to figure out how to set all this, it's already done for you. You don't have to do anything. You are literally ready to type something into this box right here, click generate, and it's going to appear. But just real quick, this is the width and the height, so the dimensions are going to be portrait. Okay, you can change that. You can reverse that really easily if you wanted a landscape just by clicking these buttons here. The batch size is how many are going to be created in this run. Right now we're just going to leave it at 1. All of this other stuff is technical that Stable Diffusion people will understand, and if you love this stuff, it's worth learning about. But let's just type a freaking prompt. Now let's start with something really simple, like a turtle walking into a bar to order a drink. You know, just something you see in everyday life so that we have reality to compare it to. Now, the very first time you hit generate over there, it's going to take a little bit longer than it's going to take from then on, because these models, which are fairly large, have to load into the memory. But that's a one-time dealio unless you change the models in the course of your work. So if I did a couple of images with this Flux model, but if you type something in here and hit generate without choosing a Flux model first, well, that defeats the whole purpose of this demo, doesn't it? But it's an opportunity to learn from my mistake. We're going to want to choose a Flux model up here. When we click under checkpoint, here's a drop down, all these models that we have available to us, but we're looking for Flux models, right? So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Schnell model. It's a little bit faster than the Dev model. The quality isn't necessarily always as good as the Dev model, but for generating fun things with text like magazine covers or movie posters, I find that Schnell just gets you there, and it doesn't take as long to generate an image because you can generate it in fewer steps. In fact, because I loaded this Schnell model, I'm going to take the sampling steps down to about 8. You really only need 4, but I like 8. It does make a difference. And now we're going to click generate, and we're going to wait while that Schnell model loads. And while that's loading, we can just look at these pathetic turtles walking into a bar. This result is because we used the wrong model with the wrong number of steps, and all of this technical stuff I was talking about before, it's not set up to give good results. That's why when you click Flux, it handles all of that for you. But it's up to you to choose the Flux model. It can't read your mind. All right, so let's see what happens. It's still loading in. It is a 12 gig file, and remote system or not, that's going to take a minute. Here we go. We're getting our results right now. You'll see that it had an estimated time of 2.5 minutes, but it quickly adjusted that, and it's going by fairly quickly. Now, we are just generating one image, but look at that. Okay, now it's not the anthropomorphic type of turtle that I was kind of hoping for, you know, with like a hat, but I didn't tell it to. Now, it's the wonderful thing about Flux. You really get to add a lot of details, and it's going to adhere to your prompt. If you've played with other image generation programs, you may have the experience of that being hit or miss, especially when it's dealing with text. Now, we didn't tell it to do pulsar chartils, but if we had given it specific text instructions, it would have followed it nicely. And remember, that's with only 8 sampling steps. So I want to introduce you to a free tool that you can use to make prompt creation for Flux a lot easier. It's called Glif, and basically it allows you to type in a simple prompt, just a simple phrase like we did before, a turtle walks into a bar to order a drink, and it enhances it in a way that Flux loves. It gives it some details and says, okay, I see how to have fun with this. Plus you can create these things in a variety of different styles. Personally, I like to start with hyperrealism, and then I'll tweak the styles once I'm in whatever program I'm using, whether it's Forge or Comfy UI or whatever I'm using. I'm going to say anthropomorphic turtle walks into a bar to order a drink and run it in the hyperrealism mode, and it generally just takes a few seconds. And here we have it. Now we can just click this to copy it right into our clipboard, but we've got hyper-realistic anthropomorphic turtle, shell intricately textured, ambles into a dimly lit wood-paneled bar. Patron's eyes follow as it approaches the polished counter. We've already got it copied in the clipboard, so now we just go over here to the prompt section in the Mimic PC in our Forge installation, paste that in there, click generate, and wait just a few seconds because the model doesn't have to load anymore, and you're going to see that it immediately starts rendering, and it's just going to take us a few seconds. If we want more copies of this, then we change the batch size right here. We could also change the batch count, but we won't confuse you. Just keep it simple. We'll put this up to maybe 2, and check this out. That's different. He's up there. He's in the bar. He's got an attitude. He's kind of anthropomorphic. You know what we should do is give him some clothes. I'm just going to say wearing a top hat and holding a sign that says, I'm a turtle. Let's get really ambitious. What's your excuse? And see what Flux does with that. There were very few models out there that can follow text prompts like that and actually give you what you're looking for. So let's see what happens here. And this time we're going to get 2 copies because we changed the batch size to 2. So it'll take a little bit longer. Look at that. I'm a turtle. What's your excuse? Perfect spelling. I'm a, what's your excuse? All right, this one missed it. That's why you have multiple generations. And that's AI, my friends, but you probably know that already. But look at the quality of these images. Flux is amazing. And this is the Schnell. This is not the Dev, which is supposed to be higher quality. If you look at side by side of portraits, you're going to get a little bit better photographic quality from the Dev model. But if you just want to go ahead and play and create certainly surrealistic images like this that aren't really based in reality, I love Schnell for just being able to go through it pretty quickly. But let's do a person now. Let's go back to Glif and say a French supermodel at a photo shoot at the Eiffel Tower. Let's do hyperrealism again so we can really see what the photographic quality is of the Schnell model. We'll copy that, paste it up here. And keep in mind, we're not putting any other layer of filtering or what they call LoRa's that can add multiple different layers of styles and looks and feels and graphical elements on top of all of this if you want to learn about all of that. But just by itself, Flux can give you some great stuff. Let's see what happens here with our stunning French supermodel. All right, so these are not bad. That's really good detail, good resolution. If you weren't going side by side and if you had never seen what the Dev model would put out, you'd probably think this was just fine. But why don't we just try this same exact prompt and we'll load in that Dev model. And in this case, we're going to use the FP8 version of it because that's what we used of Schnell. So we can go head to head, click generate, and we'll need to wait for that Dev model to load. And it's even larger than the Schnell, so we wait a little longer. Something I forgot to do was raise the sampling steps up to 20, which is what we need to do for that. So I'm going to try to interrupt this, but often if the model is loading, it doesn't really stop right away. But the interrupting button allows you to stop a generation in the middle so that you can go on to the next one. Or if you have a batch going, you can skip the current batch and it will go on to the next one. In this case, we didn't really give it a chance to do anything because I forgot to change the sampling steps, leaving everything else the same. I'm going to click generate. Okay. Let's get this big here. All right, it seems just without having them side by side that maybe these colors are a little bit richer, maybe more detail in the face. We have this directory structure over here, which we can have appear and disappear if we want the space. But in the output folder, if we click down into text to image, and then into today's date, we're going to find the outputs that we've done so far. So that way we can compare side by side the Dev and the Schnell. I'm going to cheat this a little bit. I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it into an image viewer so I can just have it up on the screen. And then let's find the Schnell version, copy, paste it into a different instance. So you can see this has a glow to it, whereas this one's a little bit sharper. This one might be a little bit more plasticky or AI on the skin than this one. Of course, the lighting, it's not that evident, but I think you can see some obvious differences in the quality, but it's not to say that one is bad and one is good. They just have different qualities. Even though before I said I like Comfy UI better than Automatic 1111 or this type of interface, it doesn't mean I don't revisit this from time to time. There are certain tools I use in Automatic 1111 that are just a little bit easier for me to get the result I want, Comfy UI. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I want you to see both of them and see which one kind of works for you. And the great thing is you can come over here and try it out for yourself without having to deal with any kind of installation problems. It's just ready for you to work. So that was Forge, and there's a lot of tutorials here on the site where you could dig deeper and learn much more than what I just told you. But right now, let's end this instance of this particular machine. One of the unique things about Comfy UI that makes it really great in this situation is that you can load entire workflows just by dragging the image right onto the interface and it loads right up. Or you can download and drag what's called a JSON file, which basically has the same information in it that is embedded in the image, and just drop it on. And when you have a local installation, if you don't have some of the nodes, the custom nodes or bits and pieces of the code that it needs, you need to go download those. It's not difficult necessarily, but you do need to do it. But here, you don't need to worry about that because everything is already set up for you when you load one of these preloaded workflows. So in this case, instead of adding a new app and adding Comfy UI and loading in this Flux workflow, I'm going to show you an easier way that you can do this, especially when it comes to Comfy UI. Right here in the tutorial hub, you'll see that there's there's a recent tutorial called NF4, a faster Flux model and workflow. I told you before we were going to take a look at that NF4 model, and we're going to do it here. Let's just click into this tutorial here. And while all of this text explains everything and how it works to those of you who want to know, if you just want to get into it, you can just click this right here, run this workflow now. You get a little introduction to the tool, and you're going to click on Apply. Again, you're going to choose what I recommend, the Large Pro, but you can try it for yourself, but you'll see it's a lot faster if you do that. And then just like before, it's going to build the machine. And note that during this build process, you do not get charged. All right, here's the workflow, but again, you don't have to understand all of this stuff unless you just want to take that on, which I think maybe if you're really into this, it'll be worth your while definitely to understand that this isn't as scary as it looks. Trust me, I avoided it for months, which may as well be years in AI terms. You'll notice that the Flux model, the dev model, is already loaded up here, as well as everything else that needs to happen to make this work. You don't have to worry about custom nodes or downloading models or anything. We have in here a prompt already, a close-up of a face, Cyberpunk city, neon flashing lights. Sure, why don't we go ahead and go with that just to give the demo, and then we're going to use Glif to create some other ones, and we'll see what we get. So we're going to just click on Q prompt here to get that party started. Just like before, we need to wait for this model to load. It's still big. It didn't get smaller between demos, so we're going to wait a minute while the dev model loads. You'll notice that the workflow is already set up for the number of steps it needs for the dev model, so we're already getting the image going in the sampler. A little trick, if you want to see your renders in progress before they appear here in the save or preview image, you can go to the manager and just go over here to preview method. Right now it's clicked to none. I like TAESD. It's slow, but it's high quality, but you could also do any of these others. Just close that up, and then the next time I render, it should start to appear here as it's rendering. So again, remember this was 20 steps and not 4, so it does take a little bit longer. Now that is pretty good quality. I mean, that is why people like the dev model for sure. If we were to do that in a Schnell, it would still be a good image, but it would look a little bit more plasticky, I can almost guarantee you. All right, let's use Glif and let's create a movie poster, because I love doing that. So movie poster for, and then I can just put it in quotes, the kitten dilemma, with an exclamation point, about a family overrun with kittens left to them by a relative who is secretly an alien. Okay, I didn't plan on going down that road, and I don't know what it's going to do here. Now, that seems like a Pixar movie, doesn't it? Let's just, for fun, let's render in Pixar style first, and then we'll go back in Hyperreal, because I really am curious of what it will do. We'll click on Pixar here, and we'll run the Glif, and we'll copy that prompt, and we'll just plug it in here to our prompt square, which is this right here. Let's get this aspect ratio, the shape of the image, if you will, to more a movie poster, because right now it's closer to a square. So I'm going to bring down the width a little bit, maybe 800, and that ought to probably do it. So we're going to leave it there. We'll click on Q prompt and watch the magic unfold. You'll see it is previewing here, like I said, and already we're seeing that the text is looking great. We can see the preview of the style coming. I love doing movie posters. It's truly one of my favorite things. And there's the alien, see? Almost done, almost done. And it actually did, even though this was the dev model, it did an okay job. It did put the text. I have to work a little harder to get the movie poster text in with the dev than I do with the Schnell for some reason. But look at that. And again, with just like before, you got an output folder here that has your images, and you can select them all and then download and all of those things. Instead of going back to Glif and having it regenerate that, I'm just going to change where it says vibrant Pixar style movie poster to dark and moody horror movie poster, and I'm not going to change anything else. And click on Q prompt. It's still got a Pixar cartoon style. Did I miss something here? Let's see. Dark and moody horror movie poster for the kitten dilemma, featuring a chaotic living room overrun with adorable mischievous older family members, wide-eyed comically posed surrounded by playful, more inviting, exaggerated expressions might have done it. Oh, I guess it's not exactly Pixar, but still animated. But I like that, right? It's got a whole different tone to it, but we do not have the text, as I said. So to try and get better text, I loaded what I assume is version 1 of the NF4 model and ran that prompt and got this with the credits at the bottom and the whole thing. More movie postery. But you can also try something like a magazine cover. We won't even go with Glif right now. We'll just say a woman in her 80s sitting in a garden on the cover of So Many Freaking Roses magazine. She is wearing an old sundress and holding a small shovel. There are storm clouds in the sky. There is a feature in the magazine titled "Don't Read This." All right, let's just see what that does with this NF4 model. By the way, I put a lot of steps in here, 28, just to test this, and I'm going to bring this down now to around 20, more like the dev model. I tested it with 4, like the Schnell model, and didn't get it much of anything. Okay, so it kind of missed the boat on the text on this one for sure. The image itself is really good. I mean, her hands seem almost normal, but the words are off. But we've got the barcode on the magazine. We've got the storm clouds in the background. It's a nice image. It just doesn't nail it with the text. Why don't we try the version 2 model of NF4 and see if that makes any difference with the exact same prompt. And in fact, I'm copying the seed, which is basically a random value, or you can determine it, which sort of determines the direction that the image is going to go as it does its thing. So if you want to do some testing and see what effect a certain aspect of the prompt does or anything else you might add, you want to leave this seed the same so that you know that you're generating the same image. I've got that copied. I'm going to click on fixed here. I'm just going to make sure that's pasted in there, and now we stand a better chance of seeing a real fair comparison between the results of the model with the same prompt and the same seed. Let's click Q prompt, see what happens. Okay, similar vibe. It's obviously not going to be exactly, but now look at the text. So many freaking roses. It nailed it. So I think version 2 of this is better. Let's let it all come in. We'll look at the image quality, but just at first glance, this looks pretty amazing, wouldn't you say? So many freaking roses. There was supposed to be an article that said, "Don't read this." I guess that's what this is up here. Let me try one more fun idea, and then I want to try to run this same kind of thing through the dev model to see if we get better text. There's this trend I see on Facebook and whatnot of old children's books that aren't real, but they look all weathered and torn and have ridiculous titles. So let's go for something like that. An old, weathered, and torn, let me get this so you can see here, illustrated children's book called "Stop Calling Me at Work," featuring 2 kids on antique toy phones. All right, let's click Q prompt and see what we get. The vibe is right. I see it's working on it up here. I want to see the book like on the table. This is too flat. Maybe we can get a different angle of it, you know? Stop calling me at work. I love it. Who's the author of this book by? I'm not kidding. Old children's book, sitting on a bedside, a nightstand. I could not think of that word, nightstand. Why not next to a candle? Called, not the candle's not called "Stop Calling Me at Work." All right, let's just see what happens. There we go. Weird title, weird position. I'm not kidding. I love it. We're going to try this on the dev model next. Oh, come on. That's so fun. Stop calling me at work. You too can get likes and shares on your social media channels by creating stuff like this and making it look as realistic as possible. Mark of my words. I do want to load the dev model, same exact prompt sitting on the nightstand, and cue it. That is giving me the exact same picture, but with the dev model. So let's change that seed, or let's let the seed change. We're going to go ahead and click this to random. I'd forgotten I did that, but that's almost like they're the exact same model. Side by side, it's the same thing. So interesting. Just make sure that is dev. All right, let's try it again with a different seed. We will definitely get a different image this time. It seems pretty easy to get the text on the kids' books in the dev model. No problem. These look great. Stop calling me at work. So we were running out of the predetermined amount of time, so I'm going to extend that by 20 minutes. I can also choose to do an automatic extension so that I don't have to do this every time. Click confirm. And now I'm realizing I didn't need to do that because I'm going to stop the machine anyway. By the way, once you've created any of these virtual machines, you can always go back to them by clicking on My Apps, and they'll be right here, which gives me the opportunity to tell you that a best practice is to name these things when you're done with them, because you see here I have 2 that are called Comfy UI. They're both running different models, but I don't know which one they are because I didn't mark it correctly. In this case, I'm going to just call this Flux, because I know that that was the one we were just working on. And here too was our Forge installation of Flux, Forge Flux, because I might have another Forge app that isn't doing Flux and is all set up for other things, and I'd want to keep them separate so that they don't get bloated with things they don't need, like extensions and different models. So that's 2 quick ways that you can run Flux and really have a lot of fun with it and experiment with different models by literally just spending a few dollars, which will give you several hours of time to play with this. And then of course you can determine whether this is something you want to dig into deeper or not, but you won't have any of the setup hassles that you would if you were trying to run these things on your own machine. Believe me, that's what I do all the time. I don't know why I don't use services like this more. I guess I'm just not that smart. Remember, in addition to all of these apps that you can install, you have the ability to learn how to use them through a series of tutorials. And even outside of this platform, of course, you can learn about all these various apps from my channel and others that discuss them on a regular basis. If these are the types of things you like to learn about, well, why not subscribe to this channel? Because this is what we talk about all the time.
If you subscribe now, I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you do not, I will look for you. I will find you. And I